Hey everybody, my name is Clyde, and in today's video we're going to be talking about this little ship right here, which is the Hector, a Tier 9 light cruiser that's going to be joining the Commonwealth fleet. Let me bring this guy down here. Now, Wargaming hooked me up with a rental of this ship so that I could test it out, and I played a bunch of matches so that hopefully I can give you guys a sense of what this ship is all about. Hector is one of many premium ships that you can unlock absolutely free in World of Warships, but that doesn't mean that it will be easy or fast. And of course, it will be faster if you do spend a little money on premium time or something similar. The ship's going to be joining the Research Bureau, where she'll cost 46,000 research points. And you get those points, if you're unfamiliar with the Research Bureau, by resetting tech tree ships that you've already ground up to Tier 10 and playing through those lines again. If you want to know more about that process, maybe you've never done a tech tree reset before in order to earn Research Bureau points, or maybe you've done it before but you thought it took forever or it sucked and you'd like to be more efficient at it, I made a video all about it. You guys can check it out. I'll put it up over here on the screen, and I'll put the link in the description of this video as well. When I started shopping around for comparables for the Hector, I found it kind of difficult to find something at Tier 9 that I felt played and felt like playing Hector, to kind of explain that to you guys. And so I started looking around at other tiers, and one of the ships that really kind of reminds me of playing Hector is Flint. Both of these ships have smoke, they have destroyer caliber guns with pretty quick reloads, they have ranges that are a little bit short for the tiers that they occupy, they both have hydros, they both have basically zero armor, and so you can really get punished if you're not keeping your eyes peeled for danger. If you like playing the Flint, you'll probably like playing the Hector, but we're going to get into a ton more detail as the video continues, so just kind of keep that in your mind as we keep going. For consumables, Hector has an interesting little kit here. She's got damage control party, just like every ship in the game. She's got a repair party. She does have a Hydroacoustic Search. Now, this particular module that I've got here is not going to be what's on the final ship. Wargaming released a late-breaking dev blog. She's going to have a Hydroacoustic Search that's similar to the one on Daring or the British cruiser, or British destroyers. So 3-kilometer ship detection range, and probably, although not confirmed, a longer duration. We'll talk more about that when we get to the hydros section as well. And then she has a crawling smoke generator similar to the one that we find on Perth and other ships like that, where it can move with you as long as you're at quarter throttle, which is a really powerful capability. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the video as well. Thank heavens, Wargaming gave us a real camouflage for this ship. She's actually got more than one color. They're arranged in some sort of a pattern. The Hector looks great. In fact, I like this camo so much. Look how rad it is. Plus that green, we don't get a lot of green ships, I think. There's probably more than I think, but excuse me. This is just a good looking ship. And of course, this side of the ship is not green, you know, as much. It's got more of the black and gray built into it. I think this camo looks so good that I never even bothered to see what the alternative color looked like until I sat down to make this video. And the alternative color is also rad. It's a more traditional kind of blue and gray, but check this thing out. It looks fantastic. You really can't go wrong choosing either of these camouflages to deck out your Hector. Before we get into rating all of the aspects of the ship, I did want to talk a little bit about the hot take system. It's kind of a mix of the numbers and the data behind the ship, and then kind of my reaction and my opinion about how that stuff works. So it's a little bit fact and data driven, and it's a little bit Clyde driven, and I kind of smashed those things together to come up with a score from 0 to 5 on a ship of how good I think this particular attribute is. If you're curious about this system, I do have all of the hot take scores I've ever done up in a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, which you can access. There's a link to it down in the description of this video. It includes basically a table that has a list of every ship I've ever rated, a link to the hot take video if there is one, and then all of the scores, and then some notes that explain if I ever made any adjustments to the final hot take ratings. Feel free to use that as a resource, or to use it to see if there's another video that's like this that you might want to watch after you watch this one. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Hector's guns. The guns on Hector have excellent DPM. In fact, of all 27 cruisers at Tier 9, her HE DPM is second, only behind Seattle, and her AP DPM is third, behind Neptune and Seattle. Now, I found the AP to pen fairly well against superstructures or destroyers, but the 133mm shells ricochet and they shatter pretty often. She does not have any improved pen angles or short fuse times or anything. It's just regular old AP on Hector. And so I found that the fires for me tended to do a little bit more work, especially if the target was at all angled. Now, if you know you can get pens, AP shells are almost always worth going for, because in this case, for example, the AP damage is about 34% more than the HE damage. And even after damage reduction and all the things that happen in the math behind the system, you'll get about 34% more damage. I did a whole experiment using the daring, which is on my YouTube channel. You can check that out if you're curious about how this works. But I do think that in cases where you know you're going to get pens, the AP may be worth switching to, but only in those superly, perfectly, excellently broadside scenarios, or when you have a very lightly armored target and enough of a broadside that you'll be able to hit, and make sure that you're going to get pens. Otherwise, just ride the HE all the time. I found that to be the best. Speaking of the HE, Hector's got 14 barrels and a 10% fire chance, so she starts fires pretty readily. I found myself using those HE shells almost exclusively because of this fact. And you can get all of your guns on target, every single gun on the ship, but only in a very narrow sector, pointing to one side of the ship or the other. I'll try to show a little bit of that on the screen right here to show just how much rotation you have. You'll usually wind up with 1 or 2 turrets that can't make the shot, but that's okay, because luckily you have enough guns that you don't need to get them all on target simultaneously. The shell velocity and flight time is fairly low, which normally I don't like, but with Hector's very low hit point total, it's a real benefit because it allows you to sit behind an island and lob those shells up over the top for safety, and of course then you're stealth firing at targets that can't even see you, who are spotted by your allies. Hector's gun range is 15.6 kilometers, which is the 4th worst of all cruisers at her tier, but her good concealment makes that range feel a little bit longer. It's a little bit more workable than, say, Buffalo, which is a ship that has the same gun range, but its detection is 1.3 kilometers worse than Hector's after you build for it. The more expert small caliber damage agrarians among you, you know, the real Colbert captain types, you guys are going to be able to do some absolutely horrible things to your enemies with this ship. For guns, I'm giving Hector a 4 out of 5. Hector has the exact kind of torpedoes that you would expect from a Commonwealth or British cruiser at tier 8, 9, or 10. They have a speed of 62 knots, they go 10 kilometers, and when they reach their target, they do 16,767 damage. They're the exact same torpedoes that you have on Drake and on Neptune. Now, like Neptune, you've got 2 racks per side of 4 torpedoes each. Drake only has 1 rack per side, and you can launch them either individually or in a wider spread. It feels like Hector's wide spread is a little bit wider than normal, although I haven't really confirmed that. Maybe I'll put something on the screen here if I figure it out between now and when editing is done. But I'm going to rate Hector's torpedoes a 3 because they're pretty standard fare, but they're very usable and very decent. Next, we'll talk briefly about survivability and concealment. Now, when Wargaming announced the NDA lifting date for us CCs, they also told us that there were a few changes to the ship that hadn't been implemented yet. One of them is a nerf to concealment, and the other is a change to hydroacoustics, which we'll talk about when we get to that section. Now, when the ship releases, its concealment will be worse than the ship that's in my port right now, and I want to be very, very explicit and clear about this. It's going to go from a 10.5 kilometer base at sea detection range to an 11.6 kilometer base at sea detection range. And when I say base, I mean before you build it for concealment with your commander and your upgrades. During testing, Hector's 10.5 kilometer concealment would have reached 8.5 kilometers, which would have been the best value of any tier 9 cruiser in the game. In fact, it would have been the 4th best out of every cruiser in the game from tier 7 all the way through tier 11, only being beaten by Munchen, Shumpan, and Kitakami. And honestly, you can't even get a Kitakami, so that ship doesn't even count. At the time of release, Hector is going to have approximately a 9.4 kilometer detection range. Now, 9.4 kilometers is not bad at all. However, this new concealment range is no longer a best-in-class and tier defining feature for the ship. It's just pretty dang good concealment. And Hector needs that pretty dang good concealment because when she goes to battle, she only takes 34,400 hit points with her. She is equipped with a hull repair, which is great, but it's fairly standard. It's not special in any way. It can heal up to 14% of the ship's hit points and 10% of the citadel damage that she's taken. I'm a little bit torn on what rating to give Hector for survivability. I think I'm going to give her a 4, but I was hinging on a 3. She's got smoke, and it's good smoke too. It lasts 100 seconds almost, and it's the crawly type, so you can move around a little bit at low speeds. She's got a decent hull repair, which seems to be able to keep me alive, at least in practice. She's got pretty dang good concealment, even though it's not incredible like we saw in the dev blog before. It's still pretty dang good, and I think she can put up enough of a fight that people aren't going to want to mess with her too much. So I'm going to give her a 4 for survivability and concealment. And again, I'm interested in your guys' thoughts. How would you rate this part of the ship? Okay, let's move on. Next, let's talk about the Hydros. During development, Hector had a 5-kilometer ship detection hydroacoustic search module similar to the one found on Vampire 2, and you can read about this on the WoW's dev blog. But just before release, this was replaced with a shorter range hydroacoustic search module that they described as similar to the ones on British destroyers. One could argue that this change is both a nerf and a buff, provided that some of our basic expectations are met, and I'll tell you what those are here in a sec. The shorter range Hydros tend to run for 180 seconds. That's 3 minutes, whereas the module that was on Hector only ran for 100 seconds. That's 1 minute and 40 seconds. So that's a buff, right? More hydroacoustic duration. At this point in time, however, Wargaming has not confirmed that the Hydro is going to have a 3-minute duration. They just said it's like the ones on the British destroyers. I'm using air quotes and kind of paraphrasing, but that remains to be seen. I suspect that it will be that same module like we're used to on Daring or Druid or whatever. And as soon as I know for sure, I will put a comment on this video and I'll pin it at the top that explains the new Hydro module specs so that you guys have the real information here, right here, co-located with the video. Now, during play, I tended to use Hydros on Hector to keep myself safe from torpedoes when I was smoked up and hugging my island and slinging HE shells at enemies who couldn't see me because my allies were spotting them for me. Well, I haven't played this particular ship with the Hydro. I have a lot of experience in the Druid, and the Druid has the short-range acoustics module, and it smokes up and farms people with its rat-a-tat-tat machine guns, kind of like Hector does. I think I'll enjoy the longer runtime, but I'll miss the extra 2 kilometers of range like I enjoy on my Vampire 2. All that said, the hydroacoustic module is a wonderful thing to include on a ship like this, and I think having the 3-kilometer module, provided that it has that longer runtime, is going to be a great tool for this ship to have. I'm going to give the ship a 3 in this category. Now for AA, Hector has one of the worst AA suites of any cruiser at tier 9, which might surprise you because she's a light cruiser of British design, and we know Neptune is so good at AA. The only ships that she outscores are Ibuki and Kronstadt. She's got pretty weak DPS and the fewest flak puffs of any cruiser at tier. Now, you could swap out your hydroacoustic search for a Def AA module, or I'd call it Turbo AA, but I really don't recommend this because at the end of the day, the hydros are just too valuable for the positions you need to be in when you're playing this ship. You're going to be close to enemies, and you're going to be, using islands which are going to obscure your vision of smaller platforms like destroyers or other cruisers that might come and get you. Now, she will knock down a plane or two during battle, and of course you can also use your smoke to make it harder for CVs to attack you, thus giving your AA a little more time to get airplane kills, but her ability to just do raw damage to those planes is fairly anemic. I'm going to rate Hector's AA a 1 in this category, and that's just kind of the way it's going to be. Sorry, Hector. When it comes to anti-submarine warfare, Hector has over-the-side depth charges, which means they are not airplane delivered, they are not airstrike ASW. She does kick out 8 bombs, which do 5,000 damage apiece, which is twice as many as Neptune or Minotaur kicks out, so she does have a slight advantage over those ships. But of course, again, it's over-the-side depth charges, which is kind of a bummer. One thing she does have going for her, she does have a lot of guns, and she does have a hydro module, which when used in conjunction with your over-the-side depth charges, probably is going to be the way that you kill most of the submarines that you face in this ship. If somebody can get a spot on a submarine, a ship with a short reload time and a lot of guns can usually snap off a few rounds at her. So I'm going to rate Hector's ASW a 2. A little bit better than it probably would be because she does have good main armament for this and the hydros, which are going to help both in defensive and offensive maneuverings against a submarine. Taking a look at Hector's maneuverability, her speed, turning radius, and rudder are all in the top third of the tier 9 cruiser list, so she really does tend to scoot around all right. Hector, however, isn't a cruiser that needs a normal kind of maneuverability. It's not a run-and-gun cruiser. It's not doing any of that kind of work. Yes, it needs a little bit of speed in order to get dibs on a good island early in the battle, but after that what she needs is quick acceleration and deceleration so she can scoot in and out from behind that island or maybe jump over to the next island. Luckily, she's got it where it counts, and I've got a little chart here for a cruiser drag race that explains what I mean. So basically what we've done with this chart is we went out and we drag raced 5 cruisers. We measured how long it would take them to go from 0 knots to 30 knots and then back down to 0 knots. What I wanted to see was the difference in acceleration and deceleration of these ships. And what we can see is something that we all kind of already know. British ships accelerate very quickly. And so the white and green lines, which are Hector and Neptune respectively, accelerated up to 30 knots very, very quickly. And then their deceleration slope is about the same as it is for Buffalo, Rune, and San Luis. I'm sure there's some variation there. But that slope, or in other words, how steep the line comes back down, talks about how quickly you can decelerate from speed. And it's kind of indicating here that Hector is not special in terms of deceleration, although her acceleration is kind of special. And that's great because she can dive from this island to the next one to find a safe place to hunker down and to, set up to start farming her next target if she needs to move, or if she needs to retreat a little bit, she can retreat at speed and go from 0 to fast a lot quicker than other platforms. Taking into account that she's got top third scores for speed, rudder shift, and turning radius, and she's also got the acceleration that she needs to do the island hopping that's so critical for a ship like this, I think I'm going to give Hector a 4 here, which might be a little bit generous. If you think she only deserves a 3, hit me up in the comments and tell me why, but I don't know. It's 1 extra point. Let's not take it too seriously. So is Hector easy to play? Well, I think Hector's a little bit easy and a little bit difficult to play kind of at the same time. I think it's easy to use the guns to hit targets and farm damage and all of that stuff. What can be a little tricky at times is finding a place where you can do that kind of work safely. This is a common issue that I think players have with ultralights like Smolensk and Sejong and Jinan and Colbert. And one thing that Hector really has going for her that those ships don't is her gun range. Yes, I did tell you earlier her gun range is a little bit short at her tier, and it is compared to some of the other platforms she'll be fighting, but it's 1.8 kilometers better than Colbert's gun range, and it's 1.1 kilometer better than, kilometer, is that singular? Kilometer better than Jinan's gun range. That extra range makes finding a safe place where you can do that sort of enemy farming that much easier. It just gives you more choices. She's also got that crawling smoke we've been talking about, and that can be used in motion. Now, granted, you won't be moving very fast, but you will be able to jump from here to there or make it a little bit more difficult for your enemies who are trying to target you in smoke, although some players are pretty good at shooting where the ship with the crawling smoke is crawling. She's also got that hull repair, which is really useful to help allow you to recover from making a mistake. I used the hull repair in this boat a lot, and there were times where I took a big citadel, and I'm sure I've posted clips already in this video of me taking big hits and then healing back a chunk of that and staying in the game because I was able to use my concealment in conjunction with the hull repair to get back a little bit of health and then also to stay out of sight while I continued to farm and do whatever work I needed to do. Hector does really well when she can take up a position early in the battle and the enemy presses into her and you can punish them for it. And learning to just identify those positions, which islands are good, is going to be a really critical skill for people who decide to pick up the Hector. I think given the hull repair and the good concealment, even after the nerf and the smoke, I'm going to give Hector a 4 for ease of play. Plus those guns shoot so often and there's so many of them. How could you possibly miss your target entirely? So I'm going to give her a 4 for ease of play. Now, is Hector fun to play? I mean, I think a lot of that depends upon you. Do you like HE spamming ultralight cruisers? Are you a Smolensk or a Colbert fan? Do you like hopping from island to island as you either move up to capture more ocean or you have to fall back because your flank is starting to fail while you sling HE and torpedoes at your enemies? Do you enjoy scooting across an island gap where there's a danger that you could be spotted by some submarine or destroyer that you didn't know was there, all so that a Yamato can blast you for 25,000 hit points from across the map? Because that might happen. Ask me how I know. I think Hector is a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of risk and reward with it. I enjoy the guns on the thing. I love when you slap and it's like 8 or 9 hits in a salvo because you launched 14 guns. I think that part is really fun. She's not like stupid fun like a Paolo Emilio. Like a Paolo run is such a novel joke of a thing that you can do. Hector's not that way. Hector's a little more serious than Paolo Emilio. I think she's really going to be fun in a division setting. If you've got collaborative players, you can smoke for each other. Maybe take a radar cruiser, take a Hector, or take 2 smoky cruisers and a spotting destroyer. I think you could build some pretty cool comps that way. So I'm going to give Hector a 3 in this category because I think she can get some work done. She'll be really cool with friends. But she's not like amazingly super fun in all ways, but I think she's really reliable. And I think she's a ship that's going to be somebody's favorite ship for sure. Could you use Hector in a competitive game mode? I don't think so. I mean, I think taking Hector into a competitive mode is sort of like having a steel camo on your Genon or taking a Colbert into COTS. It's a pretty cool flex, but it's not really in the meta for anything competitive. She's too frail. She doesn't have sensors that contribute to coordinated team plays. Her sensors are very localized, very self-serving. So I'm going to rate Hector a 2 in the category of competitive. For my captain build, we go with Last Stand to keep the ship mobile no matter what. Survivability Expert, which pushes the hit points up to 38,450 in my build. And Concealment Expert, which helps us stay stealthy. We go with Adrenaline Rush for the obvious reasons that it's going to make us put out more damage as we take a little bit of damage ourselves. And then because this is an ultralight cruiser, these guns are 133 millimeters. That means they're smaller than 149 millimeters, which means you can take heavy HE and sap shells for free. In other words, no penalty to concealment. You just get 10% extra damage. That is one of the things that makes this an ultralight instead of a regular light cruiser. I go with Demolition Expert to push up the fire chance to 9%, and then I have Consumables enhancements, which makes the duration of my hydro and my creeping smoke last longer. Lastly, I went with these 2 torpedo skills. I don't know if these are actually the best way to go or not. I've got Swift Fish that makes the torps go like a couple of knots faster, and then Fill the Tubes, which makes them reload faster. You could swap both of these out and go with Superintendent instead to get an extra hull repair, an extra hydro, and an extra smoke. I didn't find myself running out of these, but I think as I get better at staying alive, these might be more valuable to me, and I may swap these torpedo skills over for Superintendent. That's how I build it. I'd be interested in your thoughts. Please hit me up in the comments about Captain build specifically. That's something I always love talking about. For Hector's upgrades, we've gone with Main Armaments Mod 1. In second slot, I went for a coal acoustics module to make those acoustics last as long as possible, which if we do wind up with a 3-minute acoustics module when we're all done, should actually be even better. Again, keep your eyes peeled for that pinned comment on this video. Aiming Systems Mod 1 to reduce dispersion and do some other good things for us there. Steering Gears Mod 1 to help with our maneuverability. Concealment Systems Mod 1, which again is part of bringing our concealment down just as low as we can possibly get it. And then finally, I've gone with Main Battery Mod 1. You could swap this for Gunfire Control System, and if you do, it puts your main battery firing range out to 18.1 kilometers, which makes me kind of laugh a little bit, because I just don't think you could hit anything at that range with how floaty these shells are. So I'm going to switch it back to Main Battery Mod 3. But those are the upgrades I run on Hector. Okay, so that's it, everybody. So here's the question. Should you get Hector? Should I get Hector? I mean, I'm thinking maybe I will get Hector. I am going to have a big pile of research points here pretty soon. And I should get Ohio, but I keep not doing it and getting Hector or some other dumb ship instead. So maybe Hector is the next ship in line that's going to keep me from getting Ohio this time around. What about you guys, though? Do you like Smolensk and Colbert, Genon? Are you a Flint main? Like, what kind of ships do you like, and do you think Hector would fit into your port? Do you have a high-level Commonwealth commander? Remember, this is not a British ship, even though it kind of looks like one. And yes, you can get by with a 10 to 14 point commander, but obviously the more points you have, the stronger your build is going to be. What about Brisbane? Are you going to get Brisbane? Because these two ships should not share a commander. Hector is an ultralight, which means she can take the heavy HE skill, and Brisbane should not take that skill. Thus, you need 2 commanders. So if you want to know more about commander cohorts and how to choose those ships, you can check out my commander cohorts video, which is all about a spreadsheet. And I'll put a title card for it here on the screen, and of course a link down in the description. Thank you a ton for watching this video, and maybe if you watched one of the other ones that we talked about, because there were so many references in this video, which is crazy. Thank you for watching those as well. We hope to see you next time, or you can come join us at twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive, where we do this live, a very different kind of content, but all of the same kind of interesting topics are being covered over there. So thanks a ton for watching, guys, and we will catch you in the next biddle. Biddle? I'm not gonna fix that. What? Biddle.